Hi, welcome to another $1 Masterclass with me, Clay. This is the second part of our tutorial on the sus4 chord, which is like a really useful chord, and it gets used all the time. Dance music, R&B, jazz. It's a great chord. I call it a get out of jail free chord because you can you don't need to worry about what chord follows it. You can just use another sus4 and you can move them all over the place. If you want to change key, you can just go to a sus4 and then just move it to another sus4 wherever you want, and then carry on whatever key you've arrived in. Okay, so as with all these tutorials, the first video, the first meticulous lesson, is it's designed to just show you, without the theory, how to find the thing and how to incorporate it in your music or use it or whatever. How to recognise it if you hear it in a song. And in the second tutorial, we dig into a bit more of the theory and stuff like that for those of you who are interested in the nuts and bolts and how it works. Okay, so let's look at our sus4 chord. So the first thing we should really look at is, why is it called a sus4? What does that actually mean, sus4? So it means suspended fourth. So in most chords, if we look at a C chord, let's go to the key of C. So here's our key of C. We're not using any black notes in this key. We're here. Okay. So in the key of C, let's go up to, here's chord 1. I'm going to go up to chord 5. There's a reason for this. We'll get to that later. Here's chord 5. Okay, so it's a G chord here. Let's put it down here. Sounds a bit better. Okay, so we can see this is an ordinary G major chord. We've got a root, we've got a major third, and we've got a fifth. Unless the fifth has been changed in some way, we don't even really need the fifth. So, because in this chord, G tells us what the name of the chord is, and B tells us whether it's major or minor. So in this case, it's a G major chord. Okay, if we wanted to add a seventh, we'd put that here. Okay, this now called a dominant 7, and it sounds like it wants to go. So this third wants to pull up to the tonic, the key note C, and this seventh, this wants to pull down to the major third of our C chord. It's a really powerful sound, called a tritone. Again, we get into that in a separate video if you're interested in tritones, tritone substitution. I want to keep it focused on our sus4 chord. So I don't want to give you like a load of extra information that you don't really need related to this chord. So here's our G7 chord. We're going to C here. Okay, so we can see in this chord we've got our three essential notes. We've got our root, we've got our third, because it tells us if it's major or minor. This tells us that it's a dominant 7. So in the key of C there's only one dominant 7, and it happens on G. So in any key there is only one dominant 7. It's on the fifth chord. So if we looked at C, I'm going to leave out the fifth here. There it is. So it's on the fifth degree of the scale. We get this dominant 7 chord. Okay, and then it's going to pull us back to C. Okay, now if we suspend that, let's take this third. What happens with the sus4 chord is we replace the third. So now this chord is sort of ambiguous now. We don't really know if it's major or minor. And that's the reason why we can move it anywhere that we want to on the keyboard. Because it doesn't have that major third. So therefore all the principles of Western harmony are kind of being thrown out the window a little bit, because normally if we hear this, okay, these two want to pull up to here. We've taken away that third, so that one part of that pull, one part of that pulling is trying to pull us back to C is gone. So our ear is saying, well, okay, I don't really know what's happening here, and we can use that to our advantage, and therefore just move it around. Okay, so here's our sus4 in kind of basic form. We've got our root, we've got our suspended fourth, and we've got our seventh here, our dominant seven. Okay, well this is quite nice if you like kind of playing fourthy kind of voicings in jazz or something. We want like a stronger voicing and a nice, easy to find voicing. So the two voicings that when I say voicing, I mean the way that the shape that we make the chord, the way that we arrange the notes. So the two voicings that we looked at in the previous video, we're going to look at these two voicings. So the easiest way to find the sus4 chord, as I explained in the first video, if we want a G sus, then we want a major triad, a tone below G. Here it is. So we take an F major and we put it over the top of G. So we could call this F over G. It's actually a sus4. If we take this, let's take this down here. So what we've done is we've taken here's our first chord, our G dominant. We've moved our third up to here. Now what we've done is we've also added this ninth. There's two reasons for that. One is it gives it a fuller sound, a nicer sound. But the other reason is it makes it much easier to find, because when we rearrange that, we have this F major chord here. So here we call this G9 sus. Got suspended fourth, so it wants to drop down here all the time. But because it doesn't have the third, we can move it wherever we want. So we could move it up. Often people like to move these in kind of minor third jumps. So we go. And wherever we end up, we can say, okay, we've changed key now. So let's come back to this shape. So we've got two main shapes that we use, this one or this one. We could use this one, it's quite nice, but it doesn't happen so often. The two most useful ones is this one, so that's F over G, or this one where we've just basically moved this chord and we've moved it down to this shape. We've taken the C and put it down here. Okay. So the reason why the sus4 it's called the sus4 because we've got a suspended fourth. The fourth replaces the third. That's what's happening. Nothing to do with the fifth. The fourth replaces the third, so we don't have a third. So therefore, because we don't know if the chord is major or minor, it's a bit more ambiguous, and therefore we can move that chord around wherever we want. Hence why I call it get out of jail free chord. Okay, so then we can pair this chord with, in essence, this chord wants to be chord 5. It wants to kind of pull us, and then, or. Now, in the 251 videos, in the 251 tutorials, if we looked at a basic 251 in C, it would be. We're not really going to get into the 251 here, obviously. Have a look at those tutorials for all about the 251, the major 251 and the minor 251. But an important 251 set of shapes is here's chord 2 in the key of C, here's chord 5, here's chord 1. Now watch what happens if we take our 2 chord and we go to our 5 and we don't change anything here, we leave it like that. We've ended up with a sus4 shape. Here's our sus4, look. Here's our suspended fourth, 7, 9. So that's why the sus4 always wants to kind of, it aspires to be a chord 5. And so, whilst we can move it wherever we want, if we want to kind of come back home, we're going to say it's chord 5. So here, this is chord 5 of C. and so is this. So what we can do, we could say, okay, let's say we're in C and we want to change key and we want to go to, let's say we want to go to F. Okay, now there are ways that we can go to F in quite a simple way. But let's say we want to jump straight from our chord 5 here. We don't want to mess around, we just want to jump straight into the key of F. Okay, so let's say we're going around a vamp in our C major vamp with a... Okay, now we want to change to F. So we could go from here. What's chord 5 in F? Well, chord 5 in F is C. So let's move this to a sus on C. So here's our C. We're going to take, we want a major triad, a tone below C. If we use the same voicing as we've got here, we can move it wherever we want. So we could just move our sus4 chord around all over the place until we decide that we want to sound like we've arrived in a key. So let's say let's come back to our nice simple F over G shape. Okay, so I'm just going to move this sus4 chord around a bit, and then at some point I'm going to decide, okay, I want it to sound like I've arrived in a key now. So, okay, gone down to here. Okay, now I'm going to resolve it. So I'm on A. So this means this is going to be chord 5 of D. The other nice thing with the sus4 is we can resolve it to major or minor, doesn't matter, because it's an ambiguous chord. It still wants to be chord 5, but it could be chord 5 of a major key or a minor key. So in a lot of dance music, people like to use it to go to a minor key. So if we were here, we're going to go to C minor. Okay, now I'm on E, so I'm going to go to A minor. Okay, so you can see it's a really, really useful chord, and that's why it crops up so often. And we've got our two main voicings that we're going to use. If we just want to find it, the way to remember it is, if you want to find it anywhere you like, let's look at like F sharp. I want a sus4 in F sharp. Okay, so I'm going to take an F sharp. Here's my F sharp major chord. I'm going to drop that a tone. There. That's it. That's my sus4.